Okay, so we're back for the Advent challenge and we are on day 4. I am going to use lots of wet in wet today for you to learn to flow those colours and trust those colours to flow together. So I thought we would do a little decoration, and I am going to create a little bird decoration. So I'm going to do a circle. If you're worried about what your circle is going to look like, I tend to wing it a little bit and don't mind. I don't mind if it's not quite precise. Then you can draw around something. What I'm going to do is create on that circle a little bit of a tail feather. So I'm going upwards, and then over that circle I'm going to do another circle that's smaller. So this is cute decoration time. So we've got a little tail feather, we've got the bottom of the bird, so this could be like a wooden decoration, and then we want a little bit of a beak. Basically this is going to form, we can take that a little bit higher, the decoration shape. So we've got a nice little bird decoration. Put a little hole in there. We'll take a ribbon up. That ribbon's going to stop at the top there with a line, but then it's going to come down behind the decoration. So you can have a little ribbon going behind. Okay, I just went rooting for rubber then, so I've rubbed out the bits that are still in the centre, and I am going to stick a couple of legs on the decoration too. Okay, so I've got the palette from yesterday, and we're going to use these colours and then we can add to them. So what I'm going to do is wet the decoration. So I'm going to start with my squirrel mop, and then I'm going to use a number 6. Just make sure that I've got plenty of water. I'm going to avoid that ribbon. I'll paint that after. I just want you to see how colours can mix together and create lovely effects today. Okay, so I'm going to use some of the blue to start with, and we're going to be mixing on the paper. So I'm just going to drop them in towards the edge, and we're just going to watch what they do. So this is intense blue. It's a shooty pigment, so you can see it shooting. It doesn't like to stay still, and it also likes to overpower, but it won't overpower an opaque, because an opaque is more powerful. But this is a potent transparent. There's lots for you to learn in watercolour, and it's just about learning it bit by bit. So I'm just coming around that little hole we created with the ribbon and coming to some edges. So remember, if you see the tip of your brush, you know what you're painting. The precision is there. If I come into this, I've got a little bit of rose left here. I've not rinsed my brush in between, so this is going to make a little bit more of a purple. So I'm going to drop little bits of that in. Now this is starting to dry a little bit. There's still what I call a sheen on this, so it's still got plenty of time to paint with, but it's not quite as wet as it was. So I can drop in onto the purple. So we start to see some interesting effects happening. We're just going to keep dabbing the colour in, creating those blends. You can use whichever colours you want when you're doing this. This is all about just trusting the paint to do its thing. We are not mixing the paint together. We are letting the paint do its thing. I'm just going to grab a little bit more rose. Just pop a bit out. Try and stick with a different cool colour palette on this one so it's a little bit different. And then loaded my brush, I've dabbed into the neat rose. So these are all transparent colours. Again, I can touch in places. You can watch what it does. If the colour's stronger and thicker, it'll overpower the other colour. If it's waterier, it'll disappear. You see, you can get a really nice, interesting effect. Come down this edge. So I just want to make sure that I've got a really nice shape, because this shape's gonna stay there. So I'm just taking my time. I'm going to swap down to a detailer just to get these points really nice. Come along this edge. Come along that edge. We're not looking for it to classically look like a bird shape. We want it to look like a decoration shape. I'm going to come back into the blue. Just alter this edge a little bit so it comes up a little bit more. I think that's nicer. Steady hand. So it's about brush control and trusting what the paint is doing. So it's doing some really lovely things here. So I'm just going to let that settle a minute. Okay, so that's dried and settled now, and you've got a really beautiful effect. And this just shows you that if you let the watercolour do its own thing, it will work beautifully for you. I'm going to come on, I've got my little detailer brush, and I'm going to come into this Payne's Grey, just very carefully paint in the little legs on my ornament. So this is on to dry. Any amount of brushwork that you do like this, it's all good practice, and the more you do it, the better you will get at it. I'm going to wet this side of the ribbon. I'm going to use a little bit of this cadmium yellow. So this is my round number 6. I'm just going to come onto that side of the ribbon. If I want to give this a bit of a feel of having a light and dark side, I can just dip into a little bit of the orange, bring that down one side. I'll just dry that off. It's really important that's dry so that you get the back. That edge needs to be defined, and if it's dry, that defines an edge. And so I'm coming in with the orange first. I come down that side, then I'll rinse my brush and dab into some of the yellow and do the yellow there. if you want to give it a little bit more of a sense of shadow, then we can look at complementary colours. So the complementary colour to yellow is purple, and that's going to give us a really nice shadow. And we can just bring a little bit extra just in on that underside edge. So this is just a little dab of purple. Also goes quite nicely with the colours on the bird. So that's just giving a nice natural shadow underneath. I can just run it down that edge and pop a little bit just around the bottom there. So what I'm going to do now is just show you some different ways to add texture, so this becomes a bit more ornamental. It's beautiful as it is, but I can make it look more ornamental. Okay, I'm looking for my flat. Here it is. Okay, so I've got a flat here, 1 centimetre flat. It's not looking very clean, so I'm just going to make sure that I clean that off. So I've loaded it with water, and I'm going to come through and just create a stripe with water, and then I'm going to do another stripe with water, so there's a nice big gap in between. What I've got here is a watercolour pencil and a bit of sandpaper. An emery board works well as well, and this is a metallic watercolour pencil, but they're not very metallic, and I'm just going to scrape it on, and you're going to see that drop onto the wet paint. So what I'm creating is a line of texture. So it's adding to the effect of the ornament. Now if I dry that off, so that's nicely dried off, and you can just see how easy it was that the wet paper has held that speckled effect. So it's really nice to have a few watercolour pencils around and about, and a bit of sandpaper or an emery board or nail file. They tend to work quite well. So what I'm also going to do is with my rigger just draw, or paint actually, a few lines of water, and then I'm going to show you a Schminke gold powder. So this is very similar in that it holds to an area that's wet. So this is a little bit like eyeshadow. It gets everywhere, but I'm going to sprinkle it on, and wherever it's falling and it's wet, it's going to hold a line, and it's quite nice because it's gold. You can see it's getting gold everywhere. I tend to do it into the lid and then just let it fall on. I'll pop a link for this in the description if anybody wants to buy something like it. It's quite nice for Christmassy things. I think I popped a bit of water on there as well, so let's just pop that on. Okay, I'll dry this one off. Okay, so that's nicely dry. It does actually sit a little bit on the paper, and the way to get rid of it is to just use a dry brush. Whatever you do, don't use a wet brush on it because it will just smear it because it's water soluble. But a dry brush will just brush off any excess. It's quite nice because it's giving it a lovely sparkle. But I don't want too much to sit on the paper. So there we go. We've got a lovely bird ornament, and I shall see you tomorrow.